This episode of The Witch Wave is brought to you by Woodland Magic. Hand-poured in small batches by an escaped academic turned candle maker, Woodland Magic candles are deeply inspired by nature, folklore, mythology, and literature. And I'm here to tell you, they look and smell so divine. Immerse yourself in a dark forest with candles like The Woods, Forest Floor, and Black Phillip. You know I love that one. Or conjure the magic of ancient goddesses with Persephone's pomegranates, Athena's familiar, and the Kaliach. If you're a bookish witch, you'll love their literature-inspired volumes of Forgotten Lore, Carmilla, and The Priory. And all Woodland Magic candles are made with 100% soy wax and non-toxic fragrances, and they're available at awoodlandmagic.com. That's awoodlandmagic.com. And best of all, orders of $60 or more come with free shipping, and Witchwave listeners receive 10% off their orders with code WitchWave10. So head on over to awoodlandmagic.com, use code WitchWave10 for 10% off, and get free shipping for orders of $60 or more. Hello, my friend. I am often asked about how people can get even more Witchwave and more magic in their lives overall, and I have the answer. You can join me over on the Witchwave Patreon. This is how you can hear from me and my other magical guests on a weekly basis via my Witchwave Plus bi-weekly bonus episodes. And you get the regular Witchwave episodes ad-free, and you get detailed show notes for all of it. And all Patreon members also get access to my monthly ritual workshops, which you can attend live or watch the recording of at your leisure throughout the month. Rewards for some tiers also include magical merch and contests where you can win Witchly prizes, as well as early heads up about my workshops before they sell out, and opportunities to work with me one-on-one. And all backers get access to our exclusive digital coven, where you can connect to a community of other wonderful Witchwave witches around the world. So head on over to patreon.com/witchwave and sign up. It's a magnificent way to get more magic in your life and to support the show. Thank you so much.
The world is filled with bewitching people, and you might be one too. Welcome to the podcast where art is magic, magic is real, and reality is stranger than dreams. I'm Pam Grossman, and this is The Witch Wave.
Hello, and welcome to The Witch Wave. Today we're speaking about one of my favorite topics, which is the relationship between art and magic. And we're going to be focusing on the spiritual component of abstract art, which has always been there, but which has largely been ignored or de-emphasized by the fine art world until recently. Hilma af Klint, Vasily Kandinsky, and other pioneers of the abstract art movement were very explicitly tapping into the spiritual realm and then trying to represent those energies through the visual language of shape, color, texture, and space. In fact, Kandinsky wrote a whole dang book about it called Concerning the Spiritual in Art, in which he talks about how the creative realm picks up on and projects vibrational shifts, writing, quote, "Literature, music, and art are the first and most sensitive spheres in which this spiritual revolution makes itself felt." Even so, a lot of this history got buried or ignored by the fine art institutions, and it wasn't until recently that people even started talking about it in a public, mass way. Now, before I go further, I do want to shout out a groundbreaking exhibition that happened at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art in 1986 called The Spiritual in Art, Abstract Painting 1890 through 1985, which was curated by the visionary curator Maurice Tuckman. And this exhibition had pieces by Klimt and Kandinsky in it, alongside a lot of other artists, including Emil Bistrom and Agnes Pelton. And it really was the first time that these abstract artists were talked about in overtly spiritual terms in the public forum, particularly as many of them were either followers of theosophy or were at least influenced by theosophical ideas. Anyhow, that show, The Spiritual in Art, it traveled from LA to Chicago to The Hague, and the catalog for it is such a treasure. It's out of print now, but you can still track down copies online. And while it's now a pretty significant investment, if you do have the means, I highly recommend that you procure one, or at least see if you can track a copy down through your local library system. But anyhow, that show of 1986 seemed to have been way ahead of its time, because it wasn't really until the 2018 Hilma af Klint retrospective at the Guggenheim that the notion of the abstract artist as a spiritual seeker and creator hit the mainstream of the art world again. Now, since that show, we've seen an explosion of art making, curation, and academic research which explores and celebrates abstract art as a spiritual or even magical modality. And on today's episode, I speak to two contemporary artists who are helping to both raise awareness about the history of modern spiritual art and who are creating new abstract artworks which are intentionally infused with witchcraft, divinatory practices, and mysticism. Those artists are Sharmista Ray and Danielle Tegeter, who create work individually but also collaboratively as the feminist art collective they call Hilma's Ghost. On this episode, I talk to them all about their art-making practice, which incorporates prismatic color magic, spirited symbolism, and spellbinding shapes. And though I've been a fan of their work for years, I was particularly excited to speak with them now in celebration of their giant new mosaic installation, which was commissioned by the MTA and unveiled recently at the 42nd Street entrance of the 7 train station. Now, in our conversation, which was recorded early last week, you'll hear me say that I can't wait to visit it. However, I'm recording these words a few days later, and I'm so delighted that just a couple days after my chat with Hilma's Ghost, I did indeed take a pilgrimage to bask in the mural's creative magic and make a bit of my own. You can see photos of my visit to the mural over on my Instagram page at Phantasmophile, and you can see more photographs and learn more about the piece at the Hilma's Ghost Instagram page and website. And of course, if you're in New York City, I highly recommend you swipe your card and give it an up-close and personal visit yourself whenever you are able. And as Hilma's ghost reveals to me in our conversation, there's also a bit of spell work that they recommend you do while you're there, and you'll hear us talk all about that and so much more in this magical, artful episode. But before we get to that, first, let's check and see what's come through on the Witch Wire.
Who is it?
Witches!
Dear Pam, I want to start off by saying thank you. Thank you for making this podcast and for writing the wonderful book, Waking the Witch. I cannot wait for your next book to be out. You blow my mind. I wanted to send you this voice memo for a long time now. Earlier this year, I was in Colchester to see Leonora Carrington's exhibition. Since I know this is one of your favorite artists, I felt this was the time to contact you. I want you to know that you inspire people. You inspire me, a witch from Norway. You motivate me and give me peace of mind. I started listening to your podcast some years ago when I was a seeker. I recently found my coven and regularly meet up with several of my sister covens in Scandinavia. I feel so lucky. So, on to my questions. Can you be a minimalistic witch? And what witchy things do you always bring with you when you travel? The reason why I'm wondering is because of my life situation in the last few years. It's been a bit chaotic. It is a long story, but essentially I quit my job 2 years ago, and after that I went from project to project. I also considered traveling and volunteering, so I rented my apartment. But suddenly I got a job opportunity that I could not refuse. This job got extended several times over a year, and during that time, my dog and I lived with different friends, my brother's family, and my aunt for a while until she decided to sell her house and move on and so on. This all happened while I found my coven and connected to the amazing community. So I decided to be mindful of what I acquired while exploring Wicca. Also, for practical reasons, all I could bring was my dog and my backpack. And right now, I'm in York. I moved here in September to study, and I'm staying in the UK for a year. Thank you for listening, Pam. Take care and blessed be.
Hello, my Norwegian witch friend. What a beautiful message to receive. Thank you so much for sending it along. I adore voice messages, as I've said many times. So for those listening, please do send me your voice messages. All you have to do is record it on your phone, then send it as an attachment to witchwavepodcast@gmail.com. But anyhow, this one was particularly lovely. So first of all, thank you kindly for your generous words about my work. And yes, indeed, my next book, Magic Maker, The Enchanted Path to Creativity, will be out on October 14th, and it is available for pre-order now. The cover will be revealed very soon, but even so, you can already click that pre-order button now wherever you order books. And it's such a big help if you do, because if you order it early, that means those numbers get counted towards all kinds of other sales metrics and can make it eligible for certain lists. And it also ensures that bookshops will stock it in their stores and on their shelves. So anyhow, thank you so much to you, my Norwegian friend, and to anyone that's listening for considering doing that. But anyhow, I love your questions about whether or not you can be a minimalist witch, and also about what I take with me when I travel. And if you'll stick with me, I actually think this is quite relevant for this episode's theme of abstract art. Because as I see it, abstraction is all about distilling something down to the elemental level. And that is something that any of us can do in our magical practice. In other words, our magic doesn't need to be elaborate. It can simply be elemental. And in this case, I'm speaking literally of the elements. So when I'm casting a circle or setting up an altar, I can do that anywhere and with anything I have to hand. And what I like to do is to represent each of the elements in a physical way when possible. I'm talking air, fire, water, earth, spirit. And when I'm at home, I have beautiful objects that represent this on my altar. I have a blue porcelain cauldron that I burn incense in to represent air. I have giant, gorgeous candles that I light to represent fire, and so on and so forth. But when I'm not at home, I don't schlep all that stuff with me because the elements are with us at all times. So I can show up anywhere and put together a little altar space using my breath for air, or maybe a feather that I find on the ground to represent that element. Or I can pick up a cheap candle at a grocery store or pharmacy, or even just light a match to represent fire. I can use salt or dirt or a stone to represent earth. You get the idea. And so I think no matter where you're living, you can feel confident in the fact that you have the ability to make an altar anywhere, and you don't have to have heavy or expensive fancy objects to do so. In fact, I think that makeshift altars are often the most potent because they're so vital and ephemeral and of the moment. They're made of whatever it is that surrounds you wherever you are right now. That said, there are a couple of things that I do tend to take with me when I'm traveling, but please note that I sometimes switch them out depending on the type of magic that I'm working with. So first, jewelry. It really is a big part of my practice. I never travel without specific pendants and rings, which make me feel protected and powerful and connected to spirit. And jewelry is also very portable. So that is certainly something that I'm quite mindful and intentional about. I also sometimes bring along a beautiful wood pentacle, which represents the 5 elements and is a lightweight and easy means of symbolizing sacred space. Sometimes I bring a symbol to represent certain goddesses I want to stay connected to. And you know what I mean, I'm always connected to them, but when I want to reinforce that connection. So for example, a skeleton key for Hecate, or an arrow or arrow symbol for Artemis. So you can do that kind of thing too. And sometimes I travel with a little vial or box of incense or sacred oil so I can leave an offering when I encounter something particularly stirring on my travels. We're talking outdoor things, usually like a beautiful tree or sculpture or something. You know, I'm not just burning incense willy-nilly in a museum, much as I would love to. And I always have a little magic pouch that's filled with ingredients like herbs and specific stones. And I keep this in my carry-on bag to bring me extra protection when I'm on the road. And in my case, the little protection bag I use was a pre-made Protection for Travelers Charm Pouch, which I picked up from Dry River Witches in Tucson a number of years ago. And I don't know if they have a storefront anymore, but I just looked and they are still available online if you want to order from them. Though I imagine you can find something similar at lots of witchy vendors or online, or better yet, you can just make one yourself. So anyhow, yes, your magic can absolutely be minimalist and portable and elegantly elemental. Witches are scrappy and resourceful, and we make magic out of whatever we can find. And so I'm confident that you will be able to make your magic wherever you happen to be. And I'm wishing you safe and happy travels. Now, on to my guests. Hilma's Ghost is a feminist art collective co-founded by artists and educators Danielle Tegeter and Sharmista Ray that fuses contemporary art with modern spirituality through forms of divination and ritual. Named after the Swedish artist and mystic Hilma af Klint, the collective's work is a critique of gendered power structures, providing a critical and revolutionary platform for rethinking gender in the arts while recovering feminist histories as its ballast for critique. Their work ranges from the traditional to the esoteric, including paintings and drawings, surrealist games, the Abstract Futures tarot deck, ritual object-based installations, pedagogical workshops, curated exhibitions, community projects, performances, and artist books. Hilma's Ghost has been featured in solo, collaborative, and group exhibitions and projects at such esteemed institutions as the Guggenheim, the Armory Show, the Aldrich Contemporary Art Museum, Museo de Arte de Sao Paulo in Brazil, Galeria RGR in Mexico City, among many, many others. Reviews of their work have appeared in the New York Times, the Brooklyn Rail, ArtNet, and Hyperallergic, and their brand new mystical mosaic installation, Abstract Futures, was created in partnership with New York City's MTA and is on display now for the public in perpetuity at the 42nd Street Grand Central subway station. Hilma's Ghost joined me in person here in the podcast studio in Brooklyn, and you can watch the video of our conversation over on my YouTube channel, which is at Phantasmaphile. Hilma's Ghost, welcome to the Witch Wave.
Hi, we're so happy to be here,
Hello,
Pam.
Pam and everyone. So great to be here.
I'm so thrilled that you're here. I've been such an admirer of your work separately and collaboratively. Just so people know who is whom or whom is who, I don't know. I would love for you to introduce yourselves individually. Let's start with you, Sharmista.
I'm Sharmista Ray,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm one half of Hilma's Ghost.
Yes.
And I'm Danielle Tegeter, the other half of Hilma's Ghost.
Perfect. So I have been a fan of your work for a long time. We are both, yes, being videoed, but a lot of our audience is auditorily based. And so one of our challenges is going to describe to our listeners what your work looks like. So by way of introduction, how do you describe the project of Hilma's Ghost and what kind of imagery and colors does that conjure? Let's start with you, Sharmista.
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. So we are a spiritualist feminist collective. We'll talk about the history a little bit later. But essentially, we started because we saw the gaps that exist in art history, kind of starting with Hilma af Klint. She's not the only one, but there was that incredible show at the Guggenheim.
Yes.
And we were like, where has this work been?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so that started us on a journey during the pandemic where we were like, and what else?
Mm-hmm.
So really, we're looking at those gaps where women spiritualists who are artists have been overlooked. we ourselves are educators, diviners, and also working with geometric abstraction. And so that is our language. And geometric abstraction has not only a history within Western art, but also ancient cultures have used abstract symbols in many different ways. And so it was really for us both working with geometric abstraction, thinking about what are our alliances with history, ancient, the modern past, but also the contemporary. We have different aesthetics, but together the work is really geometric, abstract, reaching for the spiritual. We think of sacred geometries, spiritual abstraction. It's really kind of thinking about how women, our ancestors, have used these languages. And the colors tend to be really bold and saturated.
Yes. Danielle, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and just to tag onto that, so we make painting collaboratively, which is unusual.
Yes.
So, I mean, the joke between us is Sharmista uses really hot colors and I come in with grays. And so that's
Tempering
the
things.
quintessential Hilma's Ghost.
It's like Irish rainfall on my tropical sun.
So there's a fusion when we're stepping in to make work. Because painting, I think, has, and we're both individual painters for a long time, since it has such a kind of isolative, almost egotistical, like you're alone painting like Pollock, I think stepping into making a painting with someone is pretty unusual. And fusing all those, we come from different traditions, so fusing that together. And then, of course, fusing it with the spiritual and everything around us as well.
So let's talk about your namesake, Hilma af Klint. Sharmista, you already referenced the blockbuster Guggenheim show. I think that was in 2018 into 2019, if I'm remembering correctly.
Paintings for the Future.
Yes, which I don't know if the record still holds, but at the time it was the most popular show in the Guggenheim's history.
It still is.
Yeah.
And a lot of our listeners and people viewing now know Hilma af Klint's name. But for those who don't, just in case, let's give them a little primer on who she was. Danielle, why don't you start?
So Hilma af Klint was an artist that was in obscurity for quite a long time. And I like to say, we tell a lot of stories about her, that she was off on her own and she was making work, but really she was collaborating with a number of people, essentially, and also really trying to show her work as well. And the Guggenheim show, it's really just incredible to have, we had a discussion with Tracy Bashkoff as the curator, and I find this really interesting. She was like, we knew artists would love this, but we didn't know how the public would take it.
Yeah.
And of course, the public was ecstatic, and it became the most attended show in history.
And speaking about her working collaboratively, my understanding is she would do this kind of seance art group. I believe they called themselves the Five. I don't know what the Swedish name was. And essentially it was a group of women who would get together and they would channel, and they had spirit guides and were essentially taking artistic dictation from the other world. And so what was it about that, Sharmista, that you really connected with so much so that you wanted to co-name your collective Hilma's Ghost?
Yeah, so, we're both trained as painters, and painters are always after this kind of single ego consciousness in a way, and that's the way we're trained. It's like your vision, your ideas, your experience.
Your signature at the bottom of the painting.
Your signature at the bottom of a painting, and Hilma af Klint was working collectively. Little known is that these women, there were different numbers of women, and they were always channeling. And that was, of course, a time where people were really interested in the spirit world in terms of the invisible and the unseen. And that also has some ties to science as well, and what was happening in science and the development of the X-rays and photography and all those kind of things.
We're
and
talking
so,
19th century, just to
end
place
of the 19th
people.
century, early 20th century. And so there was this tremendous interest in the unseen world. And they were really investigating this as well. So it wasn't just these kind of group of witches in a room doing this. They were really also reading science. They were reading what was going on currently. And they were really examining this as well in a really serious way. And it was actually years before they heard the first voices. It was years. It didn't just happen. They would meet regularly. And they would channel, but it was years before they heard the first voices, which is so interesting, right?
That is so interesting.
It was this discipline, and they didn't just give up, or they didn't just all hear voices automatically. They were really working on this for a very long time. And the numbers of women changed. I think that's the other interesting thing that is unfolding from this, that, in the Hilma af Klint exhibition, Paintings for the Future, That first room had those huge paintings, the 10 largest.
Mm-hmm.
They take you out of this world.
I imagine a lot of you are familiar, those listening and watching, but Hilma's work, I mean, yes, it's abstract. There is some figurative symbolism in some of her work.
absolutely.
Sometimes you will see swans and hearts and things you can recognize, but other times it's almost like amoebic and it's very prismatic, lots of colors. It seems like she's expressing herself through her own coding system or
They're
symbol
all chemical,
system. Yes,
actually.
beautifully
Mhm.
said.
Yeah,
Yes,
they're all chemical.
exactly.
And what's being understood now is that she didn't make those paintings alone.
Mm-hmm.
The 10 largest were actually done through seances, and there were other women in the group that were also making those works with her. So they were collaborative.
Right.
And I think
am I
that's-
remembering Anna Castle?
Castle.
Anna
Yes.
Castle, who is incredible.
As one of her collaborators.
one of her collaborators, potentially at some point her lover. You know, there
Mhm.
was also these other hidden stories of gender and sexuality
Yeah.
in the group and so on
Sure.
and so forth. So, wow, I've talked a lot. Maybe I
No,
can let you
perfect.
talk about
And
Hilma's
so
ghost.
I'm
Why-
wondering, Danielle,
Yeah.
so why did her name or the name Hilma's
Yeah.
Ghost then become the moniker under which the two of you wanted
Well,
to
I mean,
collaborate?
I think I speak of thousands and thousands of artists when I say that that show was so influential, but it really was a paradigm shift. It really, and we say that our work, yes, we love Hilma, but we also love Ethel and we also love Agnes.
Yes.
It
and
was
Leonora
really,
and Remedios and
all of
Leonora.
them.
And,
We love all of
yeah.
them.
and we,
Yep.
you know, it was really about that space was finally opened
Mhm.
through that exhibition. Like all of a sudden after that, there was space to make work about magic, about spirituality, about the fusion of abstraction in these things. And you saw all these artists who were mined out of history. You know, we are Hilma disciples, but the whole collective is really not about Hilma. The whole is really about the opening of this space.
Yes.
That to include, you know, the artists around us who are making work, but historically so many artists who made work.
Mm-hmm. And the piece of gender seems so relevant here because, as many know, the field of abstract art, so many people thought it was like Kandinsky and Mondrian and, you know, all these dudes who were the alleged founders. And then we find out that people like Georgiana Houghton and Hilma af Klint and so on were doing this kind of work even earlier. And it like both shouldn't be a competition, but also it kind of feels good, right? To be like, it was women who were, you know, doing this sooner and just didn't get the credit for it the way Kandinsky, et cetera, did. So it seems like this great act of reclamation too.
It's also, we've done an incredible disservice to people like Mondrian, who spent a very long time exploring spirituality in
Mhm.
his work as well. I think those layers were removed out of artists that were even given their due.
Yep.
you
Yep.
know, so in
That's
a lot of
so
ways.
right. I mean, I remember studying art history. It was my minor, one of my minors at NYU, and not getting any of the like spiritual or magical language being described to me about work that I knew was spiritual and magical, just like intuitively. And it was so frustrating. Like I was there from 99 to 2003. And it was still like this very materialist point of view.
Formalist,
Yes.
kind of
Absolutely.
Exactly.
perspective.
Exactly.
And, yeah, and I want to add to what Danielle said. Like, I think that we're doing all artists disservice
Yeah.
to kind of take out this entire parallel history, kind of has to be integrated with the story of art, you know?
Mhm.
Like, many artists have spiritual lives,
Ugh.
right?
I would argue most, if not all. Like to me, art is a spiritual
Absolutely.
practice.
It's an act of
Absolutely.
transformation.
Exactly. It is casting a spell of a sort, you know, whether or not that's the artist's intention. And I do think there's a way that you can put magical intention specifically into one's work, but so many of us have been transformed by art and it feeds our spirits, right? There's something
Absolutely. Yeah,
alchemical
absolutely.
that's happening when we make art and when we view art and so on, listen to music, all of those things,
Absolutely.
all of
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah, and I would say one of the reasons that this kind of spiritual route was taken out of modern art is because essentially the catalyst was a woman, Helena Blavatsky,
Mhm.
who has since maybe been discredited for some of her ideas, but you can't discredit that entire history and the way that it had such a massive impact on
Yes.
culture, on society, on artists. I mean, Hilma af Klint,
Mhm.
was a theosophist.
Mhm.
Vasily Kandinsky was a theosophist. I mean, they were all theosophists.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And theosophy, again, for those listening, we've talked about this many times on the show, but it is worth you delving into. It's this spiritual body. I don't even know if we should call it a religion, but it was
It's kind of
essentially
an alternate religion in a way. Yeah,
I would call it
absolutely.
maybe also like a spiritual philosophy.
Yeah.
And yes, one of the
better.
co-founders of it is this woman, Helena Blavatsky. And listen, she had some problematic views, as pretty much everyone in the past did, right? Nonetheless, so influential on so much of culture. So thank you for conjuring her name into our magic circle today. Now let's shift and talk about your work and how you work together. You did a beautiful job of describing some of the work in terms of it is quite abstract. There's a lot of geometry. I see a lot of what I would call sigils.
Color magic too.
Exactly. So it seems like you're coming from this very informed route that's also research-based, I would imagine, as opposed to solely intuitive. Am I correct about that?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so I guess the obvious question here is, how did you two start to work together? How did you meet? And what made you decide to start collaborating? Because that's a really intimate thing. My goodness.
It really goes back to the pandemic, which so many things I feel like go back to now. I
Yeah.
mean, so many things changed. And, Sharmista and I were friends for a long time, and they had written on my work for a piece. And when the pandemic happened, we decided to do salons, essentially,
Yeah.
and invite a witch in or a shaman and do workshops. And we're both professors, so it was kind of a natural. I mean, the joke again is we thought we'd do 2 Zooms and be done with it. And here we are, like almost 5 years later,
Wow.
with bodies of work and a public art piece and tarot. And Hilma's Ghost shifts all the time. We have our school, we have installations.
And I'm going to ask you specifically about some of those that you brought up. How comfortable do you feel sharing how you work collaboratively? Or is it sort of like your secret formula? Like, I'm trying to envision, are you literally in a room together?
It's a secret formula, even from us.
It's a mystery to us as well.
I say that, I say that as a joke, but it is actually true that both of us have longstanding careers as artists. But if you
Yes.
could have told me that I could have stepped into making bodies of work over 5 years, and the work is so seamless. I mean, we are doing magic through it. So we're doing rituals, we're doing sigils, we're doing color magic, we're pulling tarot. But still, stepping into making a painting, I would have said to you there would have been a lot more conflicts in that process. And there's really not. It's kind of incredible.
Nosy
Yeah.
question then, Sharmista. Are you physically in the same space when you're working on work? Are you trading off? Are you working on a canvas at the same time? Do you mind speaking about the literal physicality of being together? Can one of you leave and say, okay, you do this corner, or you do all the blue? Or, I mean, I don't know what the language would be, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, people ask us this a lot. I think we came up with a good phrase, which is we work like jazz musicians.
Yeah.
It really is this call and response. And it's more useful for us to see our work, even our paintings, which is seen as like this finished thing. For us, it's a conversation, and at some point, the conversation has come to an end in that piece, but it continues somewhere else. Of course, a painting has to be finished, for example. Drawings have to be finished in a certain way because they're going out into the world. But there's an open-endedness to it that is very different from when you're an artist in your studio and you're trying to resolve things. Because it's not just you in there.
Right.
There's 2 people and then a third thing happens.
Yes.
And we always say that there's a third consciousness present.
Yeah.
From the fusion of us two kind of working, because we just don't know where things are going to end up.
Yes. And of course, that brings into their conversation the idea of the third mind that Brian Geisen and William S. Burroughs popularized. They got it from, I want to say, Napoleon Hill originally first coined that phrase. And so it's this idea, again, alchemy, we're going to keep talking about it, that 1 + 1 equals this third other thing, that you seem to be kind of communing with this other thing or creating this other thing. Is that how it feels? Yeah.
It also, I will say, when there is a conflict in a color choice or a background, we're turning it over to magic. We pull tarot cards and we actually trust that process.
Yeah.
So the tarot or divination or sigils or rituals is, in a way, directs the work. Yeah, which, I don't know, has been a revelation for us as well. Because again, when you're in your own studio, you're really directing the show, through your ego in some ways. And so turning it over to that has been fascinating. And yeah, and there is a looseness. I mean, again, the joke is like when I have gray down, trimest of its color,
Yeah.
or like vice versa.
Yeah.
And there's a looseness that
balancing.
there's a spiritual meaning. You have to keep letting go completely
Mm-hmm.
through the whole process.
And I imagine you have to trust each other quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, we've made so much work together that that's in there, somehow.
Yeah. How beautiful. On that note, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. This season of The Witch Wave is brought to you by Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab. For 20 years, indie scent artist Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab, known affectionately as BPAL, has been formulating perfume oils for each month's full moon, inspired by their colorful names and descriptions in historical almanacs. 2025 will be no exception. Look for their monthly launches called A Little Lunacy, which include not only these limited edition scents for fellow lunatics, but also an ongoing series of perfumes inspired by classical artworks, and some which raise funds for a variety of charitable causes. The lab's general catalog is teeming with perfume oils, hair gloss sprays, beard oils, and bath oils, which can be yours year-round, covering a truly bewildering range of scent types and inspirations that include cinema, Gothic literature, and occultism. To that end, BPAL recently brought back a recurring scent series called An Evening with the Spirits, drawing from legends and historical accounts of Victorian-era spiritualism. These haunting scents, such as Psychodynamic Discharge and the Fox Sisters, will remain in Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab's web shop well into 2025. Month by month, year by year, the lunacy continues at blackphoenixalchemylab.com. The Witch Wave is sponsored by BetterHelp. One of my favorite developments over my lifetime is how there is now so much less stigma around mental health. I myself have been seeing a therapist since I was 14 years old, and I remember in the 1990s, it felt kind of taboo. And I'm so happy and grateful that my parents had the foresight to get me some support back then because I was really struggling and it really helped me. But they were kind of pioneers because I didn't know of that many other people of any age who were in therapy. But today, me, all of my immediate family members, my husband, and most of my friends all go to therapy. And it's just not a big deal. In fact, we all see it as such a privilege to have access to it because it's such a crucial component in maintaining our well-being. But even though mental health awareness has been growing by leaps and bounds, there is still progress to be made because 26% of Americans who participated in a recent survey say that they have avoided seeking mental health support due to fear of judgment. And that breaks my heart because I'm here to say that I have the deepest respect for anyone who prioritizes their mental health and takes good care of themselves, particularly by going to therapy. Because when we take care of our mental health, we're taking care of ourselves and therefore taking care of the relationships in our lives by extension. Because I know that when I'm emotionally healthy and feeling supported, I can then be a much more effective and supportive partner, family member, colleague, and friend. And as you may know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So let's encourage everyone to take care of their well-being and break the stigma. Now, I love my current therapist, and I credit therapy with helping me be a more stable, more fulfilled, more resilient person. And the world is better when people are healthy and happy and taking good care of themselves. And we could all use some more health and happiness these days. Wouldn't you agree? So if you're thinking of going to therapy, don't hesitate and give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp has over 10 years of experience matching people with the right therapist from their diverse network of more than 30,000 licensed therapists with a wide range of specialties. And BetterHelp is fully online, making therapy affordable and convenient, serving over 5 million people worldwide. Best of all, you can easily switch therapists at any time at no extra cost. We're all better with help. Visit betterhelp.com/witchwave to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, spelled HELP.com/witchwave. Welcome back to the Witch Wave. So let's talk about tarot. You have a tarot deck that you worked on together. You gifted me this deck, and I'll hold it up to the camera. Hopefully folks can see.
First edition. Now we're in the third edition, I think.
Well, there we go. Uh-oh. Don't worry. It's not going to show up on eBay. But it's called Abstract Futures Tarot. And maybe you could speak to this. I don't think it's shuffled. I was like so careful to preserve it as an art piece that I haven't used it yet. So maybe you want to like pop
Activate
its cherry with
Is it
me.
open?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do want to say one thing about it
please
before
do.
Danielle.
And then,
does her
yes,
thing.
please show the camera some images and
The third edition has a booklet that we wrote.
It has
beautiful.
sparkles.
So this is
love a
actually-
shimmer. Love a gilded edge. Who doesn't?
Yeah, it's not shuffled.
Yeah.
So I do want to say one
Break
thing
it in
before
and
we
then-
break into the tarot, about the tarot, because this is a good segue that we went from doing online workshops during the pandemic, and we were actually co-learners in that space. We're like, we want to know about this, and we want to try this, and we want to do that.
Yeah.
So we were co-learning in this space, and from the beginning, we had like over 200 people joining us, and we were not even marketing these workshops.
Yeah.
Which showed us that there was this huge interest.
Absolutely. The appetite is just enormous, and I think it's
Enormous.
growing.
And our first project together as artists in terms of making work together was the Abstract Futures Tarot.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, and we were kind of tricked into
That's
it a
a
little
hell
bit.
of a big thing. Like you're biting off a lot, and you did the full like 78
drawings, which was then
Whoa.
additioned into this deck.
Incredible.
Yeah, and we were actually invited to do it. I mean, now it makes complete sense that we would have physically worked together.
Yes.
But we were invited to do a project at the Armory Show 2021. There was a year gap because of the pandemic. So there was this huge interest in this new edition. And it was a miracle to us that we got a solo booth because nobody knew who we were.
Whoa.
We were just doing these online projects. And suddenly we're like, now we have to make work together.
Wow.
But there's magic at work.
Oh, yeah.
There's definitely magic at work. And we were invited. And since then, we've been making work together.
So this is the first, wow.
This became the foundation of everything, really. And I love this idea of making a tarot or a tarot card as a magical rite of passage in some way, and like fusing that meaning, but then fusing it between another person and beyond is even more powerful.
That's so beautiful. And of course, so many of the tarot decks that we know and love, at least the visuals were designed by women. We're talking about like Pamela Coleman Smith and Lady Frida Harris. And, you know, the list goes on and on and on. Okay, so I don't need you to do a whole reading. Intuitively, what should we do? What should we do a reading for? Maybe for
that's a good
whoever's
question.
listening, a message that might be
I think
valuable.
something that's coming up now a lot, and we do a lot with tarot, obviously, is, what do we need to know now about moving forward? And I think that we're in a time of environmental collapse, political collapse, a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty.
Yes.
And I would say maybe what do we need to know?
Yes.
Like now.
Ooh.
That's we'll do a quick.
A quickie.
So this is beautiful. I'm going to shuffle your deck. So
Okay, please
for
do.
me, this is really like charging the deck.
Love it.
And opening that. Why don't you shuffle it a little bit?
And maybe I'll
Charge
shuffle it
between
too
us.
to get
Yeah,
my little
shuffle it
paws
as
on there
well.
too.
Definitely.
All our
Since
energies
we're,
into it.
yeah. Ooh, I like your shuffling method.
this is like
Charmista,
good
that's
shuffle. I know this is
sexy.
Different
I'll do
kind
the
of
whole
shuffle
thing.
here.
Wow.
Fascinating. I'm going to send you to Vegas.
So for those who are only listening, Charmista's shuffling in this way I've never seen
Really?
before.
Me too.
Yeah,
That
it was
was the
like
way I
very
was
like taking the top and the bottom cards swiftly in one hand. See, and I do the old school shuffle of like,
Oh, yeah. That's a great
but then I'm never good at putting it back together like that. So there we go.
Fascinating.
And I'm going to charge it.
Yes, wonderful.
I'm going to cut
All of us.
it. Okay, we've all put our magical mitts on the deck. Danielle, would you like
Wonderful.
to do the
Sure.
honors?
So what I'm going to do is instead of this very rigid laying things out analytically, I'm going to do something a little unusual. I'm going to do what I like to call more of an unconscious kind of feminist spread, meaning that I'm making a little bit of a pile here in front of me, and then we kind of go fishing in it. So I'm going to let what do we need to know now? And I'm going to wait till I have an intuitive ping, and I'm going through this pile with my fingers for those of you listening. Well, we have the Page of Wands.
Oh, yes.
Wonderful. Very fiery, but fun. Fiery, but fun. The Page of Wands. Here we go through. The Empress.
Oh, come on.
You can some feminine energy
Yes.
in there. Like
this up.
So good.
And let's do one more. Great. Wonderful. Wow. And we have the Hierophant. Incredible. So we have two major arcanas. And then sitting in the center here, we have the beautiful Empress, which again, we cannot make this up.
And Danielle, can you hold the cards up to the
so we
camera as
have
well?
The beautiful Empress. And, again, creativity. Number 3, the heart of feminism, Mother Earth, connection. Really beautiful. I think what we need to know now is really connection, actually. What we need to know now is art making, connecting to the earth, connecting to one another, connecting in every way, and really thinking of that rejuvenation. And the Hierophant, always interesting. Always a troubling card for some people, that Hierophant in a lot of ways. And a number 5, so troubling in itself. And I think that's really dealing with how do we deal with this structure that is happening around us that is in power now in many ways? How do we challenge that? How do we think through what is important in these traditions, like the Constitution or everything like that? And how do we really challenge those and think? So beautiful paired with the Empress, who has a lot of movement, and the Hierophant, I would say, a lot of structure. And the Page of Wands makes his or her appearance as a very fiery, but moving forward in a very almost fun way.
Yeah.
And I would say that in your resistance, in your art making, in your connections, to also have an element of deep play in that, and deep fire and that fiery kind of transformation as you move forward. Taking it seriously, but also having a sense of play in all of it and moving forward. So beautiful reading.
So fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm really so lit up by this. What perfect cards. And that really resonates with a lot of the things.
In the middle. I mean,
know a lot of the things we've been talking about and thinking about on the podcast and in all of our respective work too. Beautiful. Okay. So you worked on this deck together. How large were the drawings? Did they have to shrink to become cards, or were they card size? Okay.
They were about 11 by 17 inches.
Okay.
So they were, for those of you who can't see me doing this.
Yes.
And they were set out on shelves, and they went from the major arcana to the pentacles, to the swords, to the cups and wands. And for us, with the color choices that we made, it was like a spectrum of color that surrounded you, and they were on shelves to kind of mimic the tarot cards. And there were 78 of them. And as I said, we work like jazz musicians. So to go back to your earlier question, there's sometimes where there's a soloist and someone takes the lead somewhere, and then someone else does in response. And it really kind of has its own rhythm and play. And once you're in it, you're just in it, you know? And so there's no measuring that happens there. It's just a conversation.
I love that so much.
They're on our website as well. People can see them. But even thinking about the idea of color magic and, black as the major arcana and just this combination of all of these things coming together, or the wands are red. So they're very color magic based in a way, but intuitively. And they are also completely abstract. So also pretty unusual in the realm of tarot. Even looking at the Thoth, there's still a lot of figuration. And that was very purposeful. We really wanted to make a deck that transcended strict gender roles. I love the Rider-Waite. I still read with the Rider-Waite. But there's a lot of issues with it. And it's really obviously not inclusive. So, we wanted to kind of get under all that information with color and with composition.
So beautiful.
And symbolism,
Yeah, I love the deck so much. So where did that lead you both in your practice together? What was the next kind of, breakthrough moment or project for you?
Wow, we've done so much.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, when we look back at the work we've done in the last 5 years, it's
so prolific. It's incredible.
It's actually like there's several
We've help
people
from the
making this
spiritual
work.
world.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of help from the spiritual world.
Yes, yes.
Definitely. I think each body of work presents us with a new set of challenges
Mhm.
in terms of thinking through some of these questions, thinking about these different forms of, say, sigils that have already been in existence, like how do we use them and interpret them? Then what are we communicating through them? There's always like fundamental things that we're grappling with, and we're also trying to go back to what we've already done,
Mhm.
but always thinking about it in a new way. So I feel like each project has presented us with a set of questions that we felt excited about.
Yeah.
I would say a complete loop in a way has been to the mural now
Yes.
with the deck. It
Yes.
feels like a full circle, definitely.
We're going to get to the mural, I promise.
I
'Cause
mean,
have
I know,
so
am I,
much
like,
to
preempting
discuss.
things?
No,
Yeah.
no. The mural is so fantastic. But leading up to it, I mean, I'll just name a couple things off my list. You did something called Enchantments. Am I getting that name
Yeah.
correct? Bottled Devotionals of Divine Feminine Spirits, which felt very witchy to me. It was like a box
It was
of
pretty witchy.
little bottles and
Thanks
vials.
to the Aldrich Museum. So
Yeah.
Enchantments box was a box essentially inspired by witch jars and spell jars. And it was at the Aldrich Museum, which is in Connecticut, and of course was the hotbed of witches in so many ways. And what we did is we created a jar spell for a number of deceased women artists, like Anna Mendieta is in
Mhm.
it, but also different saints. Kali is in it. Saint Bridget is in it. And it was during the pandemic that you could actually check this out from the museum. We wrote spells for each of these. So you would take them and you would hold them and they would be charged. And you would take them into your own home. You would check it out from the museum. It was wildly popular. We were actually
And there's
really-
only one of these boxes?
There's 3
Three,
boxes.
Okay.
but they had
Okay.
2 that were being checked
They had
out.
2 being checked
Wow.
out. And yeah, we didn't really know how it would go. We thought maybe it was more of a conservative place, and it was wildly popular. People would check it out.
Yeah.
As an extension of our school, we did a whole jar spell symposium day. We did a workshop where everyone made a jar spell
How fabulous.
as an extension of it.
Sure, Mista, can you talk about, you have some pieces that are round. They remind me of like Pennsylvania Dutch kind of hex wheels or mandalas. And I noticed a lot of them are named things like abundance or peace. And I was curious, did you both intend for these to be active spells? Are they manifestations, or are they more like reflections or emanations the way Annie Besant and C.W. Ledbetter's thought forms were, or something in the middle? How
So
did they
much to
work?
say in
I guess
response to
I'm
that.
trying to ask these wheels that you created.
Yeah, before I talk about the wheels, just because it relates to the wheels and your
Please,
question
please.
is, we actually did a series of sigils called Sigils and Thought Forms.
Perfect.
Completely relating to Annie Besant and C.W. Ledbetter's book, Thought Forms, which was so influential as well. It was the first time the unseen was being, I guess, represented in abstraction. There were abstract forms to represent the unseen
Mm-hmm.
through this method of clairvoyance, which was radical, right?
Yes.
And so influential to artists working with abstraction.
And just so people following know what we're talking about, Thought Forms is a book, I want to say it came out in the early 20th century.
Yes.
And it was 2 collaborators who were kind of disciples or collaborators with
They were
Helena
theosophists.
Blavatsky. Yep, Theosophists. It's a beautiful book. It was actually just re-released by Sacred Bones Records.
Such a beautiful book.
Gorgeous edition.
Green
beautiful.
cloth-bound books.
Stunning.
Beautiful.
And a lot of people trace that as perhaps informing Kandinsky and a lot of other abstract artists. Certainly was in dialogue with a lot of the early artists. So that was a kind of inspiration point for you both as well, it sounds like.
Yeah, and we were using Austin Spare's method of the sigil in terms of deconstructing language. And each of those sigil drawings actually had meanings attached to them. So you had ritual, transcendence, abundance. We were using those words, deconstructing them and embedding them in these sigils. And we were also thinking about a way of clairvoyantly channeling color. So we're bringing those 2 ideas together in
Yes.
those. And, the sigil is essentially a symbol, right? our next body of work was these wheels. And we were actually invited by Moravian, and the show is actually happening later this year. Moravian University, which is in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which is right in Dutch country, Pennsylvania Dutch country. And so that started our research on these Pennsylvania Dutch barn stars, if you will. Do you want to say more about that?
Yeah. So first of all, they're up in Mexico City. So if anyone is in Mexico City, they're at RGR Gallery. We have a solo exhibition up now. And yes, they were absolutely inspired by the tradition of hex signs in Pennsylvania. Although it's really interesting, as I was in Asheville last weekend and I was looking at images of Black Mountain, and there were all sorts of hex signs painted. You know, it goes much further even than I thought. What struck us so much about these is that they look so much like contemporary abstraction. It's just incredible. But of course, they were fusing color magic, protection magic, all sorts of things into these, and they were hiding them. I mean, there's a lot of controversy about the hex signs, right? That maybe they were not magical, but they were actually hiding them in a number of places, so we know that they were. So for us, it's really a fusion of contemporary abstraction and color magic, protection magic, fertility magic. And like, yes, going just to answer your question in short, like, yes, they're active spells. So when you
that's what I was hoping you'd say.
them, or they're brought into your home, or you're with them in some way, they're completely charged. And yeah, they're active kind of color spells.
How fabulous.
And they're also charged through the looking and the feeling and everything that happens when you're looking at a work of art. So that intentionality is very present.
Gorgeous. On that note, we're going to take another quick break and we'll be right back. I've got a really special new offering for you all, and that is new Witch Wave ceremonial soap, which has been made in collaboration with my favorite soap company, 2 et al. 2 et al. Makes soap and skincare using traditional alchemical techniques to transform pure water and plant-based ingredients into beautiful, handcrafted, cold-processed soaps, which are also magically charged. These soaps are beyond bewitching and luxurious, and after being a hardcore fan of them for a while, I knew I wanted to collaborate with them, and I am so thrilled that they agreed. I'm overjoyed to now offer Witch Wave Soap by 2 et al., available now exclusively in the Witch Wave shop over at witchwavepodcast.com/shop. 2 et al. Founders Matthew and Natalie and I put our heads together to come up with a special soap blend that is deeply magical just for you. The Witch Wave blend incorporates such intentional ingredients as black salt for cleansing and protection, yarrow to aid in divination and love, and mugwort, also known as artemisia, for lunar connection and visionary insights. It's also blended with the most beautiful fragrant oils, including frankincense, which smells incredible and also helps amplify connection with the divine. We were invoking deities like Artemis and Hecate when designing the ingredients of the soap, as well as the packaging. You'll note the skeleton key on the side. And this soap can be used whenever you want to ready yourself for ritual work, or simply as a daily ceremonial practice to help you cleanse and recenter into your own magic. So go ahead and order Witch Wave Soap by 2 et al. And me over at witchwavepodcast.com/shop. And if you want to check out 2 et al.'s other incredible alchemical soap blends and skincare, you can do so at 2etal.co. That's TUETAL.co, and use offer code WitchWave15 for 15% off your order from the 2 et al. Website. So once again, you can get our new exclusive Witch Wave soap from the Witch Wave shop, and you can get 15% off other 2 et al. Offerings from their site, 2etal.co, with offer code WitchWave15. Hi, Witch Wavers. I know, and you know, you want some Witch Wave merch. And our print-on-demand merch site is now available through Dashery. So if you want to get different variations of our gorgeous Witchwave logo designed by Thunderwing, or our Witches Are the Future catchphrase designed by Lara Antal, printed on everything from t-shirts, mugs, totes, stickers, magnets, notebooks, you name it, you can. Shirts come in different styles and fabrics and are available in sizes small through 5XL, so you can order whatever you'll feel you're most comfortable and most magical in. So head on over to witchwave.dashery.com. That's witchwave.dashery.com, or you can click the Dashery link in the Witchwave shop over at witchwavepodcast.com/shop. Welcome back to the Witchwave.
It's so funny because and I'm doing it too, we keep talking about contemporary art or modern art. But of course, I mean, human beings have been representing the divine, the otherworldly, the sacred through non-figurative abstraction. I mean, I'm thinking, of course, about like Islamic art or Tantra paintings.
Yeah. Both
Exactly.
are part of my history. So yes, I'm interested in both of them.
Yeah. Tell me more about that. I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, I grew up in Kuwait in the Middle East. So, I mean, there was no representation of the human form.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I think in scripture as well that the divine is beyond the human, right?
Yes,
and
yes.
so it really is represented through abstraction. And you have the gorgeous mosque architecture and the mosaic tiles. I mean, which for me also feels kind of a full circle with doing, which we will talk about.
Yes.
The Grand Central Project.
It's
so
next, I promise.
Yeah.
I feel like we're really edging the listeners.
I'm not trying
right?
to preempt anything. And of course, Tantra. I mean, I'm
Yes.
from India as well. And one of the centers of Tantra and Tantric magic is Bengal,
Yes.
where I'm from. It's a more figurative tradition there. The more abstract tradition comes from Rajasthan in the north. But completely obsessed with those images because they really are vehicular in terms of channeling the divine. These images were not an end in themselves, these abstract images, and they were so simple, but they evoke so much because they were channels to the divine. And so that was a representation in a way of divine channeling. And I mean, most of them have been destroyed because they were never meant to be collected or kept. You know, when they had met their use, they were kind of discarded or not really kept. So,
yes.
And it reminds me of shaker gift drawings as well. I mean, in that sense, right?
So I just want to shout out the book Tantra Song, which was so groundbreaking. Everyone we know and love.
I know.
Yes.
Frank-André Jamais. Oh my God.
And
please, Danielle.
I mean, we know it's ridiculous to think about this first abstraction when, you know, abstraction was going on for thousands of years.
Yes.
And I also, again, want to go back to there needs to be a complete reframing of abstraction in general, because to look at people, even like the abstract expressionists that I was kind of bred off of and not infuse these ideas of spirituality is ridiculous. Now.
Of
or
course.
Mondrian or so many of these other artists.
Yes.
In a lot of ways.
Are you ready to talk about the mural? Okay. So, oh my gosh. You both designed, I suppose that's the right word, channeled, conjured a fucking epic work of art that was just unveiled. I mean, by the time this comes out a couple weeks ago at Grand Central Station. I know. I almost don't even know what to ask you. Just like, tell me everything about it. I've seen the images online. I can't wait to go. It's so stunning and splendid. Congratulations, first of all. What a huge accomplishment.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I mean, first of all, thank you to the MTA.
Yes.
For sponsoring also something that connects into spirituality and the tarot. And we also want to shout out to Stephen Mioto, who is an incredible person and the mosaic fabricator, who is a real magician in glass.
Yes.
And just incredibly beautiful.
The MTA never gets love by people who live in New York City. Can I just say, I'm a big fan. And I'm going to say one other thing. People are always shitting on the subway. Well, literally. But also...
Just don't do it near the mural.
But figuratively, people are always talking shit about the MTA and the subway. It is still one of the few public transportation systems where it is the same amount of money to go anywhere in the system. They don't charge you more for living further away. like most other public
Right.
transportation
True.
systems, it is totally democratic in that way. It is still affordable. It still runs 24 hours, a little slower than it used to before the pandemic. I'm a big fan. There you go, on record.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
one
it's
of
the
the big-
biggest, like also just thinking about spirituality
Yeah.
and portals and
And thonic energies, you're going
And
underground.
No, and the
we
people who
love,
use it
like,
from all
the-
walks of life,
Yes.
the diversity, like it's just a microcosm of the
and
world.
you know, for us,
right?
it's at Grand Central, right? So it's like those are
Yes.
some of the deepest portals, the escalators that go up into our piece. So for us, that became like this spiritual meditation. If you do want to find it, it's next to the very non-spiritual Foot Locker. If you're on like 42nd and
But
3rd
you know
Avenue.
what? Foot Locker, do they still have kind of like the winged foot as their
Yes.
logo?
Oh,
Mercury.
yeah, they
So
do.
there you go. And
you
Grand
can
Central's
see
a
it.
temple of Mercury.
Yeah.
Hermes,
Oh, that's
Mercury
so
overlooks
interesting.
Grand Central
And
when
you
you
can
first
see
walk
it even
in.
from the street. So we're so incredibly lucky. And again, there's spiritual forces from beyond. We're so happy with it.
I mean,
Looks
we
so
were ecstatic.
beautiful.
I have a lot of
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack here. But first of all, it's by the 7 train.
It is the new entrance to the 7 train. And you can
Fabulous.
come out of Grand Central into it. You can also enter right on 42nd and 3rd, right
Mhm.
again, next door to the Foot Locker.
It's between
You'll
the Foot
see.
Locker and a Starbucks, also not very spiritual. But if you
Although
you know-
there's a Melusine, used to be the logo
that's
for
true.
Starbucks
Yeah.
as well.
Oh, that's so
Listen, I'm
interesting.
trying. There's magic and sigils everywhere if
There-
you're
yeah,
looking.
This is true.
There
yeah.
you go. There
And
you
so
go.
with the
Walking on the
entrances,
street.
and what we love is that, I mean, it's not completely free because there's a fairway involved, but it's $2.90, much cheaper than going to any museum. And that's
Mhm.
what's really exciting for artists always is that it is the public that engage with this. You know,
Yes.
there are no other filters. And it's so magical just to have that in public space and people who don't expect it or like these unexpected encounters with it. You know, it's just so special.
I feel like the fact that it's at Grand Central, which is such a palace. I mean, I think about the constellation ceiling. It's a gorgeous Beaux-Arts building,
Mhm.
preserved still, unlike so much of New York, which is constantly dying and being reborn. It's a magical, magical building in general.
sure.
And the fact that there's so many commuters, you're getting this like cross pollination of people. And I imagine a lot of people probably have their head down, they're rushing. For them to be confronted with this like blast of color and magic and beauty on their daily commute, or for tourists to come in and see it, like, what a gift. I cannot wait to see it. So please tell everybody, what does it look like? Describe it for us visually.
This mural is called Abstract Futures.
Mm.
It is actually based on the major arcana of our tarot deck.
Stop it.
It's the major archetypes, the major arcana, and it really tells the story of, we're going to call it the heroine's journey.
Yes.
The heroine's journey
Mhm.
from the beginning, the fool. And we told the story completely through abstraction, symbolism, and color magic. So once you apply these stories, you'll start to see how we've done that. So the
Mhm.
first portal is the fool, is passionate, hot, pinks. There's this vertical energy in terms of the composition.
If we're looking at it, this is like starting the leftmost
the left.
area.
Okay.
Yeah, if you come through the fairway, it's
Okay.
actually going to be right across from you. And if you come up the escalators, it's going to be to your left.
Okay.
So
I'm
it's from
swooning.
left
I'm
to
swooning.
right.
Keep going. Keep going.
And so that is the story not of just everyone who comes to New York. It's a story of immigrants, a story of everybody. Like, you know, when you take those big risks,
Mm-hmm.
right? You need that passion, that energy, like pushing you towards that.
Leap of faith time.
The leap of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the Fool card. And then the second largest wall is based on the Wheel of Fortune. And that is really the grounding card. You'll see a lot of earth colors, earth tones, grounding colors, a little bit more. Now the Fool has come down to earth a little bit. You know, this is the material realm. There's disappointments.
You're waitressing.
Yeah.
Instead of making your artwork.
Right, exactly. There's all these challenges and ups and downs, which is the story of everyone in New York. And then you go from the Wheel of Fortune into the celestial realm. You know, you have the moon, which is the shape of a crescent in our design. You have the star immediately above it. And so this is the shadow self in a way. But the shadow self is also extraordinarily beautiful. You just, you know, there's a light from the stars and the moon illuminating this. And that's the spiritual self, right? Like you're coming through these challenges and you're coming into the space, which you're integrating the physical and the spiritual together.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the colors are dark of night, but there's sparkly elements to it. And the last wall is actually the largest wall. And half of that is the symbol of the sun. But we also wanted to integrate the world into that. And so the light is kind of returning. The colors are kind of this fusion of light returning during daylight. And the last symbol, which has this horizontal movement to it, is of our wands.
Oh.
Fire, action, energy.
There we go.
Regeneration, going back to the beginning, you know, and really telling the story of the cycle.
And how, Danielle, do you imagine people interacting with this piece? I mean, I know you can't control that.
I mean, first of all, it's been so exciting for me to just watch people go through the space, which is, again, in a way, magically activating. And also just a little bit about the physicality that we have these two curved walls. To be honest, we were not very happy about in the beginning. And we were like, oh God, you know, we make work about straight lines. But they really envelop you and there's different walls. So it really does show this kind of process of going through, which is beautiful, going from the escalator or out or going in through the entrance in that way. And how do we view? Well, we've actually asked people as you walk through, we've actually asked, and I'm asking for everyone's help on this to keep charging this for us. To think of an artist, a mentor, feminist person, someone that really inspires you, and I want you to whisper it into the wall. So we're asking, a lot of people have done this already, so thank you. And just as you go through, just whisper and keep charging this wall for us in a lot of ways.
Beautiful.
So I hope you're transformed as you walk through, not only with this beautiful glass, which is transcendent in itself, but energy.
Oh, that is so stunning. I love that so much. Now, when you pitched this to the MTA, were you pretty blatant and like out of the broom closet in terms of the magic, or did you sneak
a lot of conversations?
Well, because I know the institutions, and as much as hooray Hilma off Clint and all these other occult and magical shows that have happened, there still is the art speak and the language, and it's a lot of
public
veiled
space. There's a lot of beliefs in public, you know, like people are coming.
So I just wondered, how much of this was covert and how much of it was
this is
overt,
the basis
if you don't mind my
of a lot of
asking.
conversations that we had. And it was really challenging because it was like, it's hard to talk about something like this and then not talk about it. And also, you know, we're publicly witches, like where it's pretty public. You don't have to scratch, like, you know, you just have to Google.
And they invited us.
They invited us.
So there was like, they know our work.
We actually actually it was a process. We kind of gave in, like halfway through, I was like, we just have to embrace this. And if we don't get it, we don't get it. You know,
there's a moment of surrender.
Yes.
But because our work is abstract, I feel like in a way, again, it becomes very inclusive in a way that kind of figuration or something wouldn't. So we went with it. We were pretty blatant.
We talked about the tarot, definitely, and the archetypes of the tarot and the journey. And shout out to the MTA Arts and Design as well, I will say. At the time of writing the press release, they actually wanted more information about the tarot and the journey. They didn't take any of that out. So supportive, facilitated this entire process, wanted us to have our work in public space, supported the language around it as well, you know. So we have them to thank as well for allowing this to happen in public space. Because I will also say that we had a really crazy story of a tarot deck, one of our tarot decks that was delivered to the wrong location. Sorry, Pennsylvania, we love you, but it was in... you know, and it was burned.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was burned. Won't give the denomination of the community who did this, but it was burned, you know. And so we're well aware.
There's definitely can be a backlash. I mean,
absolutely. And stigma
we know
and
this.
misunderstanding.
Right.
We know this, especially
and
now.
But I think also these stories are ageless stories that go into myths, and you know, you look at the Bible and it's inherently connected to organized religion in a lot of ways. Like there's levels of Judaism or Christianity. So you know, it's people don't like to talk about that much, but there is lots of all of those systems embedded.
Yes.
No, and the story we wanted to tell is one of inclusivity. You know, and we often say, like, don't be afraid of the witches. Be afraid of the people who burned them at the stake.
Exactly.
Right?
Thank you.
Witches were mostly healers, right? Malevolent magic is a very small percent of actual magic. But that has kind of been blown up in the public imagination through media and so, and histories and so forth. And those stories are really about gender inequity more than anything else, right?
100%.
These women were not harmful to society in any way. But they were not dependent, right, on patriarchal systems, many of them. That,
Mm-hmm.
they lived alone, or they lived with women, or they lived with their cats, or whatever else, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of women and
Mm-hmm.
cats.
Right. And they were in
Tarot
direct
decks.
line of inheritance. Like, love Sylvia Federici's book, Caliban and the Witch,
yes,
right?
the best.
It's always been tied to money systems and capitalism,
right.
right? This kind of exclusion. And what we're trying to do, we wanted to use this to really tell a story that we can all connect into,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not an exclusive story, it's an inclusive one. And I
Yes.
think that essentially is what we wanted to create as this gift to New York, a city
Ugh.
that we just deeply love,
So gorgeous. Again, just like the hugest congratulations, the hugest
you.
thank you both. I mean, I cannot wait to visit it. And just the idea that it is supercharging this already really like magical palace. And the other thing that's coming to mind is the fact that Mercury is the god of commerce, and this idea of the wheel being his symbol in a lot of different systems too. And I love that you are taking that magic and I suppose we could say that Mercury energy is sort of gender non-binary, but I still think of him as kind of a dude. And the fact that you're feminizing this temple of Mercury, which is what I think of Grand Central
That's so
as, is
interesting.
like really, I don't know. It excites me anyway.
You said you had a story about Grand Central.
Well, my story is that without talking too much about it, because I think my listeners are sick of hearing me mention it, but I have a new book coming out called Magic Maker, The Enchanted
gonna
Path
be
to
amazing.
Creativity. And it's all about art and magic, and creativity and magic being essentially the same thing. And Mercury is its guiding sort of spirit. So I've been doing a lot of Mercury work, and I am going to do a working at Grand Central just privately, just for me and the book, to just like give it a little extra love and, an offering to
Great.
Mercury. But it didn't feel like the right time, and I didn't know what I was waiting for. And now I'm like, oh, so clearly
arrived.
I'm
Well, that's
gonna,
a huge honor for us.
yeah, so obviously I'm going to
absolutely.
go and give my offering to Mercury under the main entranceway, but now I'm going to incorporate your mural as part of my ritual
I'm so
for the
honored.
book and to help it find whomever it's meant to find. So, yes.
We love that.
Yes.
It's like a collaboration.
Absolutely.
Continuous collaboration. Yeah.
I know we have just a few moments left. I wanted to give you, Danielle, an opportunity to also bring into the chat any ancestral magic or influences from your family, because we talked a little bit about charmistas. You mentioned Irish rain. Are we talking
Yeah,
Celtic
so-
magic
so
on
my
your
f-
side?
I do some Celtic magic.
Yeah.
My family is originally from Ireland.
Mhm.
So I'm an Irish citizen. I go to Ireland quite a bit. And again, I work with St. Bridget a lot in different ways. But also, I've been doing magic and tarot since I'm 14.
Mhm.
And, I grew up in the middle of nowhere in upstate New York. And I tell the story of like driving to Connecticut because somehow Connecticut was still the place that had occult shops.
Is Connecticut edgy
it's kind
in
of
your
incredible.
personal mythology?
know,
Wow. That's shocking and delightful.
They have more occult shops
Yeah,
than
yeah.
almost anywhere. And also for me, it was like music and heavy metal and transcendence through that.
Mhm.
I've always been involved with the tarot. I still read with I have a deck from when I was 14. I still have that deck in a lot of ways.
Love it. And how have the two of you evolved your own understanding of spirituality and magic since starting to work together? Whether that's through your art practice or just the way you engage with capital S spirit. How has working together shifted your own understanding of
That's
such
such a
things?
huge question.
I know.
My
I like to
God.
end on a high.
Let me try to. I always think of like the altar that we have in our studio has like Kali and St. Bridget next to it.
Mhm.
And I think there's something in that, collaborating in this way also, it then connects you into collaborating with the world in a lot of ways. It
Mhm.
opens that up out of
Mhm.
exactly who you are, in a sense, if that makes any sense.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's become wider and deeper, and you see the connections and all of that.
So gorgeous. What about you?
Yeah, no, such a big question. Yeah, I think of spirituality as expanding consciousness. It really expands you. And when you're expanding, you see these connections that may have been hidden to ideas, to other people, to community. I mean, for us, it's not just about being independent artists or two artists working together. You know, people are being charged by this, right? People are being charged by that. And, you know, the more charging work that we're doing, the more charged we become. So it really is a symbiotic, it's not us and what we put out into the world. There is this growing thing, you know, and it's about being immersed in that. I mean, I almost feel, and I feel like this as an artist as well. The more I know, the less I know.
Yes.
I feel that way about the space of spirituality. It's like the ocean, you know, it's like it's endless and you're immersed in it. And, you know, you look back for the shore and it's gone, you know, and you just keep going deeper into it.
Yeah. Well, I feel supercharged from this conversation. I cannot believe we're at the end of it. It felt like it was 2.5 seconds long, which is always a good sign. Before we go, of course, people are going to want to know how they can learn more about both of you individually and as Hilma's Ghost. So if you want to shout out any of your Instagram and websites and all the good stuff.
I'll go through those. So we're pretty active on Instagram. That's usually the best ways to find us. We're both also personally connected there. So you can get on our mailing list. You can go right to our website, which I'm happy to say has been updated. It's like a minor miracle in itself.
Yes.
And so all of those ways you can DM us. And, you know, the other thing about Hilma's Ghost, it's never been really about us as individuals. It's been about this whole community that has joined us in this and who has also been so influenced by Hilma and so many of these other artists.
Yeah.
You know, that have opened, and it's led so many people to magic.
Yes.
So say hello. Find us in all those places.
Yes.
So it's our name, Hilma's Ghost, HILMASGH.
OST.
Yeah.
Like, do I spell that right?
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
So that's on Instagram.
Yes.
And, you know,
perfect.
We're also building our mailing list because Instagram seems so unstable sometimes.
Yes.
So if you want to be on our mailing list, you know, send us your email.
And you mentioned a school that you're heading as well.
Yes.
Is that something
so
people
we
can...
have the Swan School.
Yes.
And we do virtual classes. We do in-person classes. This summer, we're teaching at the incredible place, Mildred's Lane, which is border of upstate and Pennsylvania. And we'll be teaching magic of resistance for a weekend. But we also are teaching in-person classes, so reach out to us.
We're like a traveling band now, so
yeah, if you wanted to be on that mailing list, you're interested in, and we also
Coming
do
to a city near you.
individual
Yes,
mentoring
right.
sometimes.
Nomadic art witches.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Love. Well, this has been just such a treat. Danielle, Sharmista,
Thank
Hilma's
you.
Ghost. Thank
we
you
love
so
the Witch
much.
Wave. I just
We
want to
listen
say
to it
that
in our studio all the
we
time.
spent so much of our beginning time, you know, of Hilma's Ghost listening to the Witch Wave. So we're like such a dream for us to be here, really.
I'm so honored, and just the love and admiration is so mutual. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Pam.
That's it for the show. Thank you again to Hilma's Ghost for sharing their abstract art magic with me. Do you have questions, feedback, need some witchly advice, or just want to share something magical that happened to you recently? Drop us an email or voice message over at witchwavepodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, and you just might make it on the Witch Wire. The Witch Wave is a Phantasmaphile production written and produced by me, Pam Grossman. This episode was recorded, edited, and mixed by Josh Wilcox and/or Walter Nordquist and myself. Our theme music is the song Hand and I by Lycanthia. Our new Witch Wave logo was designed by Thunderwing. Special thanks go to Matt Freeman, Laura Antal, and Cece Pascal. You can check out information about this and other episodes on our website, and now buy Witch Wave merch at witchwavepodcast.com. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at witchwavepod, and you can check out my witch emoji for iPhone by going to witchemoji.com or downloading it in the App Store. My books Waking the Witch from Gallery Books and Witchcraft from Taschen are available everywhere now. And if you want more Witch Wave or you would just like to support the show, please join us over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/witchwave. Thank you so much for listening. Witches are the future. I'll catch you next time on The Witch Wave.